Welcome to another episode of the Back Porch. My name is Grant. I'm a pastor here, the pastor of electricity here at First Grapevine Methodist Church. This is a podcast where we talk a little bit about the Bible, about things going on here on Church Street and in our lives, and we usually save time for shenanigans, but I don't even know if we're going to get to it today, because today I've got some thoughts on my mind. That's right. This is another Grant Rant. So buckle up. Here we go. So my first thought on my mind is reflecting on what time it is, which is Holy Week, which, if you caught our podcast last week, James Lawrence, the missionary of the youth of today, did an excellent job of walking us through, taking us on a journey through what it means to enter into Holy Week. But what I ask of you is to take a moment and really think about what it means to be this week, where this past Sunday we celebrated Christ entering into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday way, on that donkey, entering into the city. And we are moving towards the Last Supper, the cross, Jesus' arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane, Good Friday, of course, that time of waiting before we get to Easter, and then the empty tomb. There's a lot going on this week. One of the things that I like to do is I look up the traditional readings for each day of this week, and because you kind of our more traditional brothers and sisters, those have been about the task of investing in the tradition and of the practice of living out their faith daily for centuries, for millennia. They have a collection of readings for each and every day. I think it's a powerful experience. It's something that I do myself as I walk through this time. I think one of the most powerful stories was actually something that we read from the Gospel of John this past week that we included many, many verses. It was a very long reading, much to the dismay of our media team for all of the many slides that they had to render unto him. But there's a part of it where Jesus is there with Mary and Martha, and they're just celebrating him and pouring out expensive perfume upon his feet. And, of course, Judas, who would later betray him, is complaining and saying, "Oh, my goodness, how much money are you wasting right now?" And Jesus says, "You won't always have me. You'll always have the poor. You always have other expenses. You always have things going on, but you won't always have me." Of course, he was saying that physically to those near him. But what I like about that story is how it's both true and yet the opposite of the truth, in the sense of we always have God with us. Because Jesus says not long after this to his disciples, "I'm leaving, but I'm sending the advocate, the Holy Spirit, to be with you and teach you everything that you need to know. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not let them be afraid." I love that as we celebrate what Jesus was presented with during this week, it's because of this that we can celebrate his presence with us now. So wherever you are on this journey of Holy Week, prayers go out to you, and I do hope that you take a moment to truly reflect on, what are we doing here? What is this exercise? What are we dwelling on? What are we thinking about? And I hope it's a blessing for you. It can be hard for some of us who do this every year, especially those of us who do it professionally, but I encourage you, just put aside distractions, put aside all your old expectations, and experience it fresh today. Focus on where God is leading you right now. So I introduced myself. I'm going to jump into kind of the topic of today. Other than that, I just wanted to mention that at the time of the season that we're in. And although I'm going to be the main one talking, I'm not the only one in the room. And of course, I'm not alone. I'm not alone because I'm with you. I'm with you wherever you are, in your cars, as you're on your walk during this beautiful weather we've enjoyed, riding on your electric bicycle or whatever it is you're doing. I'm very grateful for this time to be with you in your earbuds, your boombox, your car stereo, and I'm honored to be where you are. And I hope you know that in a strange and spiritual way, I feel that you are here with me, and that certainly makes my day. So thank you. I'm joined in the room by the one and only Paul Bielss, a.k.a. Dr. Peanut Butter, the Sherpa of media, who helps me climb up the mountains so that we can broadcast out to the galaxy all of the good news that we are called to share. I appreciate him. I lean on him, and I'm very grateful to have him sitting across the table from me at this moment. Dr. Peanut Butter, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, good. If you can't tell already, if you know us, like we've had a knockdown, drag out kind of day so far. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Some of it together, some of it apart. But we made it here to what we like to call the digital sanctuary, the place where we record all of these things.
Yeah, my meetings started at 8:30, and know that yours were not far after.
The same, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been at it for actually 8. I've been at it for a while, and well, it doesn't matter in time and space. That feels like half a day ago. We don't need to tell them where and when we are right now. The point is, early this morning, and it's now the afternoon. So my topic of the day, last time I recorded one of these, I got a lot of interesting feedback because I just shared my thoughts, not fully formed necessarily, but things that are on my mind about the life of the church and what it means for a church to take a holistic approach to trying its best to help disciple people. And I pointed out that there are camps, I think, that take things too far in one direction and focus only on preaching at the expense of architecture, community, missions, only on the word, only on that. And I think that's something that is not sustainable long term. I think it doesn't necessarily give everybody everything that they need in terms of the Christian life when times are rough. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. That's a lot more than just listening to a sermon every week. There's a camp on the opposite end of the spectrum that wishes to do all the rest. There's community, there's missions. We have beautiful buildings, a place that points to a transcendent God, but sometimes misses the mark when it comes to telling you that God loves you, that God gave everything for you, and that God is offering you a better way to live. And so I was talking about this and talking about our church, and there are ways that we can be more holistic, and there's some steps we can take. And if you're a regular here, I want to tell you, like, there is some stuff that's going to come out from that. I'm going to work on a strategic plan of how to lay that out, how to share it, how to work on it. But I came here and I just shared with you those thoughts and those musings, and I appreciate the conversations that I've had out of it. That is the point. I love to be able to come on here and put a message in a bottle and throw it in the ocean and know that it gets to you. A love letter to the life of faith that you and I are called to live. I have some more thoughts. Some of these are a little bit strange, but and they're very personal for me. These are projects that I'm dreaming about, projects I'm working on, and some of them, and I'm going to end in some stuff you're going to hear about very, very soon. So that's kind of the structure I have from here's the far out down to when I leave here, I'm making phone calls and I'm going to make this happen. So if you serve on a special committee, if you think you are someone who needs special information, I'm sorry that you're hearing it here first, but this is the beauty of the internet, and this is the task at hand. Is I come here on a Grant Rant and I share things that are just in my brain. That's the only place they exist so far. I'll add another disclaimer, which is by the time they become official and they make it to e-news and the bulletin and to committees and all those things, it's probably going to go through the crucible and really develop and turn into something possibly quite different. But right now, I'm just sharing what's on my mind. And I'm talking just you and me. So my first big dream is actually something I think I've mentioned on here before. The show producer, Dr. Peanut Butter, does not remember this. I don't remember it, but a former cast member, shall we say, of the podcast told me I have shared about this. So forgive me if I'm repeating myself. But the first of my big dream ideas, this came about during COVID in 2020. I officiated a funeral. I was working with a friend from a funeral home in Fort Worth I've known for a very long time. And he's a great guy. They do a great job. But he is first and foremost a businessman. And he was bragging to me. I don't know why. You remember that time we were all kind of cooped up and perhaps often shared things that maybe we shouldn't have with people? He was bragging to me that his company had bought a Presbyterian church that closed down. They sold the property. He was bragging about how cheap he bought it for. And I remember he told me the price, and I was overwhelmed by how cheap that was. And he was talking to me about this process, and he was saying, you think churches are worth a ton of money, and they're beautiful buildings, but you can't sell them for much, because what are you going to do with them? He said, obviously, I can turn it straight into a funeral home, but what else can you do? And immediately, my imagination began to work on what would I do if I could just buy a church building. And so I don't remember when. I do remember spending the rest of the day thinking about that. In fact, that was the last time that I saw. She's fine now, but that was the last time I saw Judy Brown before she got COVID really bad. And I remember being so worried and getting updates on Judy Brown. And if you're a regular here, you know who Judy Brown is. And if you're not a regular here, you need to come and you need to meet Judy Brown. She's a special person, a wonderful human being. And I hadn't seen her in a while because COVID was a thing, and then she got very sick, possibly very sick at that service. So I have this very distinct memory of this time. And I remember sitting on my patio, on my porch, shall we say, and was thinking about what would I do? And the answer that came to my head was I would buy a church if I could. And I wouldn't turn it into another church. I would try to do something different. Because I think I love church, obviously. There's no other reason I would do this if I didn't love church and love this church and love what it means to be a part of a congregation. And there are so many strengths in that because we have democracy, we have ownership. We have to fight for consensus to move forward as a local body. We have to work together. We have to focus on discipleship, on what it means for us to grow closer to God and closer to one another and to make the world a better place. And there are so many incredible things that happen in the place of the life of a local congregation. And all of it means so much to me. And yet, there are limitations. And the church has always known this, and that's why sometimes different church groups, different conferences have tried to go out and start a thing separate from the local church in order to focus on a particular part of the whole Christian life. An example of that is summer camps for kids. A lot of church conferences or church groups own different camps, different places. Paul, I think I was telling you this, that Missouri conference, every single district in that conference for a long time, each had their own camp, like our Glen Lake camp, not ours anymore, but the United Methodist Church Central Texas Conference is a conference down in Glen Rose. And that's just an example of sometimes the church gathers together and says, if we're going to really focus on this aspect of life, we need to do it somewhere else, and we need to use different resources. So with that in mind, I thought, well, if I could buy a church building, what would I do? And here's the idea I came up with. I would turn it into a venue, renovate it, have all the things that you expect when you walk into a very traditional older church, because that's what I picture, something in an inner city area, beautiful stained glass. I would renovate.
Pews or chairs?
Probably theater seats, but I'm getting to that.
Oh, sorry.
Way to jump ahead of me. I'd love to have a pipe organ if possible, but this is not meant to be a church. In fact, Sunday morning, guaranteed, we will never have any activity. This is a venue. This is a place where we do things that a local congregation just can't get consensus, permission, can't get the masses to agree to do. What do I mean by that? There are things that I think need to happen in the Christian life that are not appropriate for worship and not appropriate for Sunday morning. There are things that we need to be able to do that churches just shouldn't do and sometimes legally can't do. For example, it's not technically legal and acceptable practice for us to engage in or host a political debate. Now, a lot of times what that means is we can't even invite an elected official to come and speak at something. No, we're doing that here at First Grapevine because we're going to walk the line very carefully. We've got an event coming up where Mayor William D. Tate is going to come, and he and I are going to talk about the connection and the partnership between Main Street and Church Street, because we both love Grapevine. We love this community and all the people who call it home, and we want to talk about how we, the Church Street, can try to help with the challenges that Main Street is trying to face. Now, we have to be really careful as we walk around that. And that's about as political as we can ever get, is just say, how can we help? But we know there's a lot of division within church. There's a lot of division in our society, and we don't have a common place where we can gather together and we can host that kind of debate. where we can have someone, I'm just going to name names, okay, and call me out for it. But, all right, so we are a Methodist church. That means we are of the Wesleyan tradition, following the foundation of a church by a guy named John Wesley and his brother Charles Wesley, okay? That's where we trace our roots, late 1700s. That's who we are. But we are not necessarily in communion and connection with other Methodists. In fact, I like to say that First Grapevine, we're kind of an oasis here in a desert, in between different groups that are diametrically opposed to one another. I lament that you can go online and you can hear one side talk about the other. You can go on and find another YouTube video and find the other side talk about the first. But I don't see very many places where a representative of each is welcome to come and discuss and share and debate. Those aren't the only two groups that are opposed to each other. I found some of my Reformed colleagues, Reformation bros, were complaining about the Orthodox Church, and they were trying to say, like, and of course they used a term similar to what I just used, and they said these ortho bros on YouTube, they don't know how to defend justification as salvation. And I was listening to this argument, I was watching this video, I was doing research for something I'm working on, and I thought, I'd love to hear a rebuttal, but naturally there isn't one. I'd love to have a space. So I'd love to have a theater, a beautiful church-looking place where we can have that. I'd love to have a venue where we can invite in different speakers, perhaps comedians who speak to faith and issues surrounding faith, like Pete Holmes. I even just mentioned his name in a comedy special because I was quoting something he said. I mentioned that in church one day, and I even added the disclaimer of, please be careful if you go and watch this. He uses language I do not approve of. I find his work influential, but you've been warned. I said, you've been warned. I still had somebody come up to me and say, you were there, right, when he was talking to me? Yeah, you probably shouldn't have mentioned that. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying it's a shame that there's a person who's talking about faith out there in the culture where you and I are not invited to go and to share, and he's doing a very effective job of it, and I can't even say his name on a Sunday morning in church. It seems like we need some common ground, a battlefield, a safe place, I don't know what you want to call it, where we could invite someone like that to come and to speak. And you and I could go there, and we could go there with other people that we don't necessarily agree with, and we disagree with so much that we can't even share a church with them on a Sunday morning. But as sheep of the one true shepherd, I feel like perhaps there's a place where we could gather, we could go. A place like this, obviously, I'd be very independent, very separate from normal church funding, separate from anything relating to any larger institutions, because it's, to use a term I've already used once in this episode, it's a love letter to church. It's not a church. I've even joked when sharing this idea, I want to call it the sanctuary. That's it, the sanctuary, the safe space for us to come and to gather. And I want to have a sign, preferably in pink neon, that says we are not beholden to any bishops, bureaucrats, or blue-haired ladies. Now, I want to be clear. I've got nothing against blue-haired ladies.
What about purple? That's what my wife has, is purple.
You know, but that's an old term for it's dyed so black it's blue.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we have nothing against purple hair either. We're pro purple hair, especially the purple hair of the lovely Rebecca Bielss. I'm keeping us both out of trouble this week.
Yes, you are.
I'm carrying water for you. You
Yes.
keep getting me in trouble. I'm getting us both out of it. That's one of my many goals on this Grant Rant today. So I want to call it the sanctuary, and I think I've mentioned that on here before. I got to be honest with you. I remember the time that I had this idea, and I was so frustrated. I was frustrated with God, and I even said a prayer, God, stop letting me have these ideas if I'm never going to be able to use them. And I don't know if the divine spoke back to me, but I did feel a little challenged of, why can't you do something about it? What's stopping you? I use a lot of excuses when I answer that question. And this is my first dream on the list. I've got several more to go. But I do dream of a place where we can come together on a weekday, on a weekday night. We can celebrate music. We can hear a challenging debate. We can hear a speaker, a comedian, something else relating to our faith, something supplemental. Some place where we break out of the echo chambers that we find ourselves in when we turn on the news or when we go to church on Sundays. Something separate from the place that we call our place of worship and home. Those are good things. This is not to challenge that or be against it or to replace it. Not at all. But how can we do the things that help us grow in our faith and help us meet new people? How can we have more targeted evangelism outside of the walls of our traditional conventional church? So I mention this to you now. I cast this out into the ocean, hoping it floats to you. If you're interested and you want to talk to me more about this crazy idea, come and see me. I'd love to share. It is actually something I'm working on. In fact, I cornered somebody quite influential about this just yesterday. I've planted this seed before. I tried to put a little fertilizer on it again and see where it goes. And it keeps coming up. It keeps like just bubbling up in my heart. I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to keep working on it. And if that resonates with you, I'd love your help. Moving on to point number 2. Are we ready? How are you feeling over there? You okay?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
You need some water?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I think that's a very great ambition thing to do. If you remember when we were at the Palace Theater.
Yes.
And
so the AC broke in the sanctuary for a couple of weeks, our big sanctuary. So we had to move the traditional service over to the chapel, and we moved the contemporary service to Palace Theater on Main Street, and we were there 2 weeks.
And we had rave reviews. And I think that the seed it wasn't planted because you had it before then, but it was
hashtag pack the palace. That's something. Yeah.
It was solidified then.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because some of these ideas I've mentioned I've had for years and years. And I thought of having an event at the palace for a long time before that. I mentioned that to you as encouragement to you. If you've got an idea or creative something, take heart. It can take a long time for that to come to fruition. Don't give up.
I think that's what we've talked about this many times here on the podcast, and that is planting seeds. You are fantastic about planting seeds. And
is he sucking up to me right now? Is that what he's doing?
You have so many seeds that you have thrown out there, and many of them have come to fruition. Some of them are still growing, and I'm just glad I'm along for the ride.
Thank you. You reminded me. I'm making a note for something else for a different point down here to say. Thank you for saying that. Actually, you reminded me of something I want to share. So moving onward. So if I'm writing a love letter to church and I want to create a space where we can talk about faith issues safely with people that disagree with us and do it on a time separate from where we're trying to come together and be unified and worship God and have our souls fed, sometimes we need to let iron sharpen iron. And I think having a separate space for that would be a strength. That's a sanctuary. But to go from a big dream of something nobody is doing, bring it back a little bit closer to home. I work here at First Grapevine, 422 Church Street. I love this place. We have acres of land. We have a beautiful facility. And we are a block off Main Street. Dr. Easy for me to say. Dr. Peanut Butter and I just walked over to Harvest Hall and back to have some lunch and to prepare for this podcast. That's so convenient. It's so nice that it's right there. And yet, this property, I feel, lies dormant most of the time. We have the chapel, we have the sanctuary, and it's just not used. And of course, we're working on that right now. There's even a project here. I'm not planning to mention today because there's something about it in our weekly e-news this week. But I look at our beautiful sanctuary, and it is beautiful. It's incredible. And I wonder, what else could we do? An idea came to mind as I've spent years getting to know the people of the community of Grapevine and surrounding area and just asking, how did you get here? What brought you here? How long have you been here? What about it? What bubbles up every time is that people move here to provide what's best for their family, for their children, for their future. And so they always talk about like putting their kids in the school districts, the best possible school districts. And I say, okay, what else did you put your kids into? And 9 times out of 10, they say one of two things, either sports or music lessons, or both. And I think, okay, sports. The church has not historically been the best at sports. We're not very good at that. Other than a time when some of our ancient ancestors were forced to fight lions in the Colosseum.
We have had some great softball teams.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
We used to have several trophies. I was part
And
of several of those
I'm not
teams,
saying
so.
that we haven't had some incredible representatives. Clayton Kershaw and the Dodgers right now. Long history. Great strikeout pitcher. Incredible, faithful Christian. Several others. But I'm just saying, en masse, not really been our thing. Music, however, now, you think about the greatest composers in history. Think about Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. The list goes on. And yeah, they wrote for the opera and they wrote for other things, but you look at the bulk of their catalog, what did they write for? Church. And yet, if you want to hear most of the greatest composers' work today, where do you have to go? You have to go to the Meyerson in Dallas. You have to go to the Bass Hall in Fort Worth. You can come here. Of course, we have the incredible Linda Love playing the pipe organ, and that's a unique experience, and it feeds your soul, and it just soothes your mind, of course. But we as a church as a whole, we don't do a lot to help protect, to help cultivate that culture. We don't do a lot to share it, even though it's ours. It's ours. It started here in our own walls. What could we do to share it? To try to spread the love of music that was written, beautiful music that was composed, to share more about the love of our God. I have an idea. I think that we need, because we are a community full of families that have moved here and put their kids through music lessons and given them so many opportunities. And we, here on Church Street, we have a 1,000-seat theater right over here. Why don't we establish, launch, and host the Grapevine Philharmonic Symphony? Now, this will not be a full season of performances. That'd be a lot to ask of everybody involved. But I picture 1, 2, maybe 3 nights a year where on a Friday night, let's say, where we are hosting a volunteer symphony made up of students from our area or adults who have taken lessons and who have been playing instruments their whole lives. They gather together and we celebrate incredible classic music. We have a night together. It's either free or it's cheap, and we're there to just love the joy of music. What a fun night would it be? Could you picture yourself, Dr. Peanut Butter, go to dinner on Main Street? Did I bumped your camera?
Yeah,
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, we're good. Go to dinner on Main Street with Rebecca. Come over here, listen to the symphony. Is it going to be the same level of Dallas or Fort Worth as a professional?
We just did that at Bass Hall less than 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Did you have a great time?
And we had a great time.
Would you have less of a great time if it was amateur? It'd be in fact probably maybe even a better time.
Yes. I will say this, that I won't complain about the money that I spent because it was well spent, but it was not cheap to go to that.
Let the record show, though, Paul is historically extremely stingy.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, notorious. Yeah.
But it was money.
Rebecca's agreeing with me right now. She's nodding along in her car on her way to work.
But I spent that money and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's a great night.
It is.
Listening to music is a joy.
And it was John Williams. It was a night of John Williams.
Music written for Star Wars. Not quite the church, but not far off.
Well, you had Jaws in there. You had Harry Potter. You had all kinds of different things. It wasn't just Star Wars.
I love how you're like, well, it's not just Star Wars. I mean, John won. He's got range. He's got range. He's right for everything. Well, my point being, like, it is a great night. It's great fun. And
did you know I learned this that night, and that is he wrote the score for the John Wayne film, The Cowboys.
I didn't know that.
I did not know that either until that night.
I'm also not certain whether or not I care.
Sorry. Okay, I'll go back in my little hole over here.
I'm sorry. It's already been a day, man. I'm sorry. My filter's gone. I apologize. But point being, we, the church, we've been gifted with so many things over time. And the more we can do to protect it and to guardian it and to share it. I think we just should. I think it'll be a blessing. And I think it's a project we should take on to try to help these kids, these adults, these people in the area who love music and have grown attached to it because it's a gift from God.
They don't have an opportunity to play anywhere. Many of them don't have that opportunity.
Not without pressure of grades or things
Right.
like that.
Right.
That's the thing. Also, they don't have a chance to play with other adults.
Right.
Churches used to have orchestras.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a tough commitment, week in, week out. It really is. And to come to practice every Wednesday night. But I'm just saying, if we had an event, if we planned it, again, a couple times a year, let's start with just one. So this is something I've thrown out to city officials, and I've actually already made a contact with someone who's on the board of TCC. And if I had a little bit more time, I would have already made those meetings and set that up. But I'm working on it. I took this crazy idea to the Rotary Club over Christmas and threw it out there, and that's when I had people come up to me and saying, why not? Why not? Let's do this. I had somebody say, look, I've been in your church. You're right. That is a beautiful place. We'd clear off that stage and we could put a full symphony up there.
Oh, yeah.
Why not? If you're interested, if you'd like to be a part, if you have contacts that I don't, reach out to me. Like I said, I've already put a little bit of legwork into it. I plan to do more. But let's do this. Let's share the joy of music. Music written to glorify God. Let's share it with the community and celebrate it. Let's make this happen. What a great, fun night we're going to have. All right, that's 2 off my list. I'm moving hopefully a little bit faster. Sorry. Oh, an offshoot of that, I'd love to see would be a small music school to have more music lessons to help supplement orchestra, band, or whatever is going on. We've got pianos, we've got room, we've got an organ. How can we do more of that?
We have 2 organs, don't we? Theoretically?
No, that's not.
Okay.
That's not for today. We're working on it. We have 1.3 right now. But we have space and we have the means, and I think that would be a natural outgrowth of the symphony project. Would be, okay, how can we host? How can we help make connections to have lessons? How can we raise money and provide scholarships for kids who can't pay for instruments or pay for lessons? I think we could do that. I was inspired by Flea of the Red Hot Chili Peppers because he started the Silver Lake Conservatory in L.A. That was just exactly that. He was kind of fed up with traveling the world and all that he had going on. And he just took a break from music, and he read a book about someone who had done just that. And he goes, I have the money. I know the people. Like, why don't I do that? And so he did. He started a school, and they celebrated, I think, 20-something years recently. If Flea can, I love Flea. I have immense respect. Chili Peppers, one of my favorite bands. But if they can do it, I can't wait. We're First Grapevine. We've been here 157 years. We can't teach kids music. It's just a thought. It's just something I saw as an outgrowth of this idea of how do we celebrate music and how do we bless the lives of those that God has brought near to us. Check that one off the list. If you are interested, if you have contacts, you have ideas, please come and see me.
If they have ideas or anything like that, how do they get a hold of you?
The best way right now, honestly, is to get a hold of Amanda, our admin. That's the easiest way to...
And that you can do that by looking on the website and seeing her email and just shooting her an email.
Amanda Latif. When she goes out of town, I'm useless. Confirm that for me.
I can't confirm that. Yes. She was
totally
out of town. She was in Chicago, I believe it was, for about a week and a half.
Don't dox her. What are you doing? Yeah, she was out of town visiting family, and I had a miserable time. So glad she's around. Contact her if you want to talk to me. If you have ideas, you can share with her, and she can get that to me. That's the best way to do that. All right. So I've gone from here's a crazy idea out there in the ether to Grapevine Symphony. So first of all, the sanctuary. If I could buy a church and have a space. Grapevine Symphony. I've got some contacts, got some ideas. It's feasible. We could do it. Now this is, we're now crossing that threshold into the atmosphere that is reality. So what I'm about to share is very personal to me. This is something that already exists. I've talked to some of you about it. Not all of you. Don't panic. Okay, what I'm about to say. I love what I do. Always have. I love working for a church. But my dream before I fully accepted my call to work in a local church. My first call, and I felt called to ministry. I really felt called to pilgrimage, to travel and to share what it means to experience the Holy Land, to go to Israel, to go to the places where the Bible took place: Greece, Italy, Turkey, Egypt, and to share that with as many people as possible, because I was blessed while I was in college to get to go and to see where so many things took place. And I'd studied the Bible and read the Bible and been in church my whole life. But going and seeing the location added so much color and texture to the stories of the Bible. And that was my original dream, and that's what I wanted to share. When I was in seminary seeking my MDiv, my Master's of Divinity, I had a very difficult loss. Not my first big loss, but a hard one. I lost who was at the time my best friend in a single car accident. The funeral was rough for everybody there involved, and it was in the wake of that experience and that grief that I felt my call to be a part of the local church. To put one dream aside and to go and to be there, to be present in those moments where life and existence and death, it all just doesn't make sense, and to walk with as many people as I can. I've been doing that for a number of years now. I don't want to add it up. Honestly, I don't know right off the top of my head. I've officiated hundreds of funerals. I have preached hundreds of messages. I've been there for a lot of life, and I still feel called to do it. It's very important to me. But I had the opportunity recently to reflect on maybe a little side project, a hobby, getting to do something extra. Had an opportunity fall in my lap. Someone with a lot of resources, someone very near and dear to my life, said, "Hey, if I could help you with anything, what would it be? What would you do?" I said a quick prayer, because I know this person very well, part of my family, and I knew this question was real and serious, and I don't know that I had a conscious thought. I just had words pour out of my mouth. I said, I'd love to start my own Holy Land travel agency. I'd love to help people go and see and have the experiences I've had, and I'd like to have a more tailored experience, and I would like to have pastors have more input on where they took their people. I'd like to be able to craft a different experience, a more personalized experience for all those who have a chance to go and to see, and then in turn to be able to go and to share. This family member didn't balk one bit, just said, "All right, well, let's get it started." So to fast forward, I have a little team of friends working on a little project, and the technical term is I have secured capital funding, and have started, at least on the business side, I technically now have a business called Ancient Adventures. That's about as far as we've gotten, but we have plans, we have dreams, we're working on it. We're going to try to plan our own trips. Going to try to go and to see. No, we don't want to start with going to Israel. Also, they're dealing with some things. But we want to go to places. We want to plan trips. We want to take people. We want to have adventures and lifetime experiences. We want to share that with as many people as possible. We want to help more pastors. Because one thing I experience when I've planned trips is I've got a million other things going on. I got a lot of spinning plates in the air. And to stop and to coach and talk about a group of people about what we're going to see and plan all these get-togethers and all these things, and also what do I share with them to read and what do I share them to do. A pastor with a full schedule doesn't have the time. And also a lot of them, I have, part of my education is archaeology and biblical studies and historical background, studied a lot of history. Most pastors who serve in local churches don't have that kind of education. They frankly invested in more useful things than I did when they were in their youth. And I want to help them and support them. I love being a senior pastor, but I was better at being an associate pastor. I was better at assisting in ministries. And I like that I have an outlet right now where I'm planning to do more of that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to leave. I'm not trying to run away. But I am. And it's been a life-giving hobby for me. It's something to work on with my friends that has been very helpful for me personally. It's kind of kept me from going crazy-er. All right. But, yeah, it's something that I've been dreaming about and I'm working on, and it exists. And it's about to exist even more. You're going to hear a lot more about that officially soon and very soon. Again, I've talked to some of you about it. Of course, when I mention something like this, I find that when I encounter people who call this place home, now I really speak to the listeners who haven't seen my face and haven't been here. You're my target audience for this. But I know a lot of people listening in are regular church members here. And most of the people, when I share this with, they're a little disappointed because they think I'm going to be here for 20 years. And that's never been my plan. I grew up in a system where it was 1 year at a time. And that's still how I look at it. And I'm not trying to think about, well, what's best for Grant? I'm really trying to think about what's best for First Grapevine. And I think there's a missional benefit to thinking about investing in a church's future, even if, or especially if, you're not going to be a part of it someday. I think you look at it differently and you look at it in a more humble way. And that's what I try to do. Now, there's another much smaller camp, but people who exist who would rather me be gone immediately too. Well, I'm sorry. I don't think either of those two camps have what's best for First Grapevine in mind. I'm trying to look after what's best for the whole church. I'm trying to answer my call to revisit this old dream, come back to it, and to help bring it to life so that I can be a part of the good things God is doing in a lot of communities. Like I said, I've got friends, I've got family working on it. I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to imply that. But it is something I'm working on, and it's something I'm passionate about. It means a lot to me. If you want to know more about it, I'd love to talk to you about it. But so to recap of where we are, I've got one more. How much time do I have?
Approximately 20 minutes.
Oh, I got plenty of time. Do I need to answer any questions about Ancient Adventures then?
I mean, are you going to tell them where it is located?
Nope.
Okay.
I do have a location already. I have some. In fact, my friend is working on me with this. I keep telling him about different conversations I've had and different things, and he gets panicked. He's a very type A. He's a details guy, which is helpful for me. And he's always like, Grant, this is a rocket ship. Rocket ship's taking off. We don't know where it's going. It's taking off, Grant. So, yeah, I've been very blessed to have a lot of things fall in my lap.
Well, I will say this, that my family in 2011 had the opportunity to go to Italy. Mm-hmm. And we secured some really fantastic guides. And as you just pointed out, I don't like to pay for things.
I just said you're stingy.
Okay. And so the lovely Miss Rebecca said, we need to do this. So we had a 3-hour tour in the Vatican.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Vatican Museum, which is open in the 500s. I think it's the oldest constantly open museum in the world.
And usually it's 3-hour wait just to get in. And here we were passing all of those lines. Mm-hmm. And so having a tour guide that knows what they're doing mm-hmm. is so important.
And having a driver. You have to have a driver.
Oh, yeah. We had a driver. We were on a cruise ship, and so he drove us all the way. But he literally dropped us off within 10 feet of the Trevi Fountain, literally jumped the curb to go to the Coliseum.
I was about to say, if you have a good Italian driver and they're in a gray Mercedes, yeah, they will jump over any curb to get you where you need to go.
Exactly.
It's terrifying and amazing all at the same time.
Well, and also we were in right inside St. Peter's, but basically there's literally this little maybe 5x5 hole, and it says this way, and it's for lack of a better term, the catacomb area where mm-hmm. several of the popes are buried. Mm-hmm. You don't know that without a tour guide, and it's so important to have a good tour guide to show you around. And I think that that's kind of what you're saying with your travel business.
You're right. I mean, you can plan a trip by yourself, but a guide can help you know the insider information of where to go. They smooth all the edges off for you. And it makes it a lot more accessible, not just for people like yourself and the lovely Rebecca Bielss, because y'all know how to travel, but I'm talking about people who maybe have never gone anywhere more exotic than the Caribbean. They're super intimidated to go to Well, Israel right now I know is still scary, even though I just talked to people who got back recently and they had a great and safe time. But Italy, Greece, Egypt, I mean, you name it. There's a threshold there. You've got to clear, and somebody helping plan the trip can make it a lot easier. But also, it's not that much. It's not that much more expensive, if expensive at all. Because if you get a group, you have a group rate, and you end up getting discounts on hotels, on flights, and I tell you what I have found is whenever you're looking at taking a group from a church or a group of churches who come together, you just can't quite put all that together yourself for that price. So it's a great way to travel, and it's so fun. It's such a blessing to go with people that you know, and you walk away with new friendships when you go on a trip together, and it can just mean so much to you to go from that's a guy I know who sits on that pew over there to that's my friend, and we had this moment together as we were walking on the Mount of Olives together, or we climbed all those steps to the Acropolis in Greece and things like that. It changes your life, changes the dynamic, and it has a huge impact on your church. And I love to be a part of that. I love to see it. I've got a friend I went to Israel with twice. I'm lifelong friends with the tour guide I've traveled with. I mean, my buddy Kevin, who helps with our sound, he went to Greece with me. Not Greece. Went to Israel with me, and we were talking about just a random moment we had on the trip. I don't even want to tell you how many years ago. It's beautiful to get to be a part of that. It's always been my dream, and the fact that I get to be a part of this project means so much to me. I've not talked about it too openly, but I've not tried to hide it either. Word's gotten out, and so I wanted to share it here. This is a dream. This is a big thought, something I'm working on, and I'd love your prayers. I'd love your questions. Love to have conversations with you. It's exciting to me. So there you go. Ancient Adventures. Check us out soon. Very soon and very soon.
And your next point.
Again, I started with, if I could buy a church, that's a huge financial commitment. I don't have that kind of money. Went to Grapevine Symphony. That's a lot of moving parts. I don't quite have it together. Got a couple people I want to talk to. Skipped over into reality. Ancient Adventures, it technically exists. Going to hear more about that. Going to have a website, share with you soon. All these things. But it's in its infancy. I'm working on it. Here's something that I hope happens soon and very soon. I do not have approval for this yet. I do not have the funding for this. But you better believe I'm going to be working on it, and I'm not stopping till I get this done. We are, as you know, in the search. If you don't know, let me enlighten you. I am currently the only actual pastor on staff here. Now, when I'm on the podcast, my made-up title is the Pastor of Electricity. That came about because at the time, when I was an associate pastor, I was managing the media team. Plus, it's kind of a joke that whenever I'm involved in an event, it's my job to liven it up a little bit, add a little unpredictability and other things that make it exciting, other electricity and chemistry to the event. But my real title is I'm the senior pastor of First Grapevine, and I have been for 2 years. And since the end of last year, I've been the only pastor on staff. I was one of 4 when I started 8 years ago. Now I'm one of 1. We are searching for a full-time associate pastor, somebody who's not just going to plug some holes, do a few jobs, but someone who's going to take ownership of a lot of the ministries of our church and be a part of our future for a very long time. It's a very important role, and we're very focused on that. But there's something that's been on my heart and on my mind for a very long time. I've been thinking about it and praying about it years and years. And that is, we need a part-time retired pastor, someone who's already done it, someone who's got skins on the wall, he's accomplished it, got the resume to prove it, lived through it, seen the ups and downs of life and of church, and has come out the other side with scars and wisdom and stories and a sense of peace. We need that on our staff. while I no longer technically qualify as young like I did once upon a time when I started here, I don't have all the wisdom and experience that I feel that we need and we deserve. I don't. I just don't. And that, I don't want to talk about meetings we've already had today, but it's painfully real to me right now that there are things that we need that I lack. And the associate we're going to hire, I don't imagine that individual will have them either. We need wisdom, we need experience, and we need it now. When I started out, I got through one rookie season, and then my second year, there was at a different church far away from here. That church hired a retired pastor who needed a part-time job so he'd have something to do and he could live close to his grandkids. His name was Dr. Jim Pledger. I remember the first day he showed up in the office. He looked like an old Harry Potter if Harry Potter had a really hard life. He had those glasses, round glasses, and he shows up and he has a kind of a high-pitched voice and he talks a lot and he says, "Grant, I'd like to take you to lunch. Let's go to lunch and talk about all the things you know." So I remember exactly where we went. I'll never forget. And he sat me down. He's like, "So tell me everything that you know, everything you need to know." I said, "Dr. Pledger, I've been an associate pastor at Arlington Heights United Methodist Church for 1 year. That means I'm barely qualified to tell you, Dr. Jim Pledger, where the bathrooms are or where to park your car. But if you would like to know either of those pieces of information, I will do my best." He looked at me for a long time, and he laughed out loud, and he said, "With that attitude, I think you're going to go far." And that began an incredible friendship and mentorship, and we talked every day. I read his sermons, and he shared with me old programs, and we dreamed big dreams, and we had ideas, and we wrote together, and actually that was where I came up with the idea for this podcast, was through talking with him. I loved so much everything he had to say. I wanted to call the podcast Pledger to Meet You, because that was his name. And I just wanted to ask him the questions I ask in the office every week and share it with the internet. We never had a chance to do it. Tragedy struck. I had something happen to me. I got moved up here. That's a whole nother story. He and I kept in touch, and we kept working on things. And he passed away. It was the beginning of 2019, because it was New Year's Day. And I was at church here. I remember because we invited people to call out, "What is your favorite hymn?" We'd sing it, we'd play it. And Dr. Pledger had been hospitalized with cancer. And someone said, "Balm in Gilead." And we sang Balm in Gilead, and that reminded me of very early on when he started. We're in a traditional service, and he says to me, he goes, "Grant," we had to sit in these tiny pews right next to each other. He says, "Grant, I'll pay you $50 if you get up and announce that next hymn is There Is a Balm in Gilead." Those of you know me know stone cold face. I just looked at him and I said, "You're on," stood up there and said, "If you will please stand for our next hymn, There's a Balm in Gilead." And he could not stop laughing. I couldn't stop laughing.
Did you get the $50?
Of course I did. Crisp. He never bet with me again about anything, ever. But when we sang that hymn at our New Year's special, 2019, I felt in my heart, I knew it, that he'd passed. And he'd passed during that service. Ended the service, I got the text from Alan, of all people. He changed my life, changed the trajectory of my ministry, and I wouldn't be where I am without him. I may not even be alive if it weren't for the heart and soul he poured into my ministry. We need that for this church. We need that for this new associate. I don't know who we're going to hire. I have some ideas. I have a pretty good idea right now. But it would be wrong if I didn't do my best to provide for that individual the same blessing that I had in my life. I know that there are things that I don't have. I am not the complete package. It'd be wrong of me to not try to provide that for the next generation of leadership for our church. That is a dream. That is a project that I'm working on. I hope to be able to accomplish it. I hope to be able to share with all of you what was a blessing to me. So just to recap, the sanctuary, we need a safe place. We need a venue where we can do those things and we can have those arguments and those debates. Here at First Grapevine, we need to host. We need to be the guardians of grace, of the music, of culture that was the God birthed within the church. We need to have the Grapevine Philharmonic Symphony. We need to possibly have a music school, a conservatory that comes out of that. I am working on Ancient Adventures. I'm so excited to tell you all about it and to hopefully get to travel with you and with your friends. And I can't wait to get you all caught up on all the things my friends and I have been working on late at night sometimes. And of course, I'm looking to hire someone. I'm looking to find someone that has the wisdom and experience that can be such a blessing to our staff and to all of you. I've seen it. It's incredible. I know what it can do. I'm getting hey, wrap it up, Grant. Thank you for being here with me. If you stayed with me through this whole Grant rant, please reach out to me. Let me know. It is a blessing. You are a blessing. It is a joy to get to do this with you. I hope you all have a great week. I hope to see you soon. But until then, go everywhere and eat everything.